Hey, White Sox fans. Guess what? It's time for another Southside Sox Mothership podcast. It's number 63. We've got some stuff to talk about. We're talking on a day off. Didn't really have a podcast to roll out on the day off. That's bad planning by somebody. Maybe one of the guys in here with me. It couldn't be me. It's number 63. I got three guests here. First of all, he risked. He knew going in was going to be trouble. He risked an undefeated record to do some coverage during the one game the White Sox got clobbered by the Cubs. Quite a sacrifice for the team, and let everybody else who's covering sort of catch up a little bit. It's Zachary Jeremiah Boom-Boom Hayes. Thank you, Zach, for that sacrifice, and thank you for joining me here tonight. Appreciate having you with us here for Southside Sox podcast. It's Darren Black because, well, Darren actually is just in the other room. He follows me everywhere for podcasts. Really, Darren, turn down your speakers. I can hear you reverberating in this room. Anyway, that's Darren Black. He's the guy you know as our minors podcast fella. And you know what? Perhaps as early as tomorrow, you'll see us talking about the minors. But right now, it's just majors. No minors. No, Darren, no minor league. Not at all.
None, zero.
Of course, batting third, fourth, whatever it is in the lineup here, it is super Joseph Resis. I believe he is maybe tied for first in coverage. Darren, unfortunately, has chosen to cover the minors this year. So I believe Darren's about 50 games below 500. However, Super Joseph and Zach have been, smart enough just to hang with the winning team. So anyway, those are the introductions. We got a little bit of stuff to talk about White Sox wise. First thing I want to talk about, because I just will never stop talking. Apologies, fellas. State of the White Sox right now, fourth best record in the American League. That's down from where they were at a certain point. They project, if you look at run differential, they project to 98 wins. Of course, you project with run differential. You'd also recognize that the White Sox are running about 4 games worse than that. Blame it on Tony, blame it on bad luck. I don't know, but they are running lower, worse than they should be. But the magic number, which is really sort of all that matters, you guys can weigh in, is just 23. So just give me the state of Sox. We just came off a run that was supposedly going to be the toughest after the All-Star break. Think they finished 9-8 in that stretch. I don't know, something like that. Pretty close to 500. Not terribly inspiring, but not tragic either. How are you guys feeling about where the White Sox are right now, heading into the last month of the season?
Personally, I've been feeling pretty similar to how I've felt for a little while, in that the playoffs are not going to be a challenge for them to reach. It's looking less and less likely that some team from the AL Central is going to go on some big run and just pull off some sort of miracle and pass them. So they'll make it to the American League Division Series. No need to worry about that random 1-game playoff in the wild card game. So that in it is a very good thing, but there are still some questions as far as their ability to take on teams like the Rays and the Astros on the road in the playoffs, because their home road splits are pretty sizable so far this season. And one of the more disappointing series was the one in Tampa Bay lately, and that's a team that the White Sox very well could face in this year's playoffs. So that would be where my biggest concern is. But they've done a very good job of beating up on the AL Central, and that cannot be taken for granted.
And perhaps also as to asterisk where they are right now as well. Okay, Joseph spoke on the AL Central. We do not need to acknowledge AL Central because he was just being overly generous to say that there's no longer a chance anything was going to happen. That was about the first week of the season, it seems. But Zach, Darren, how you feeling?
Yeah, they're right on track. They're about where they should be, I think. I don't necessarily like it. I don't think we should necessarily like it. But the fact is, even at the point where the season started, they kind of made an executive decision to be like a 92, 93 win team that wins the division handily rather than really push all the chips in and be a 98 to 100 win team. And that, is what it is. And the moves they made at the deadline, picking up Kimbrel and Tepera, are fantastic, but those are moves that are going to win games in October and not necessarily win more regular season games. So as much as I would like them to, keep going on these 6 or 7 game tears. And this is really, really frustrating seeing them kind of be mediocre against good teams. The fact is they still put out the A lineup, the lineup with Robert and Eloy and Grandalt have been together in the lineup like once or twice all year. They're still punting games in the regular season. So it kind of sucks, but they are on track. This is the track that they chose, I should say. So my evaluation, has not particularly changed much recently.
Yeah, mine's been basically the same as well. Just kind of what I'm looking for at this point is just hoping guys stay healthy and getting back the few guys that aren't healthy to be better, like Evan Marshall and Adam Engel whenever they come back. And then hopefully they at least are with the home field advantage for the division series, because right now Houston's only a game up on them. And I think that's pretty huge if they could get the home field advantage in that case. I don't think they'll catch Tampa Bay, but those are the things I'm looking for. Excited for the playoffs. But they have some work to do, obviously, to get the pitching right again. But the hitting is finally there. So at least something is looking like it's playoff ready right now.
Is there a concern? It's easy to overreact to game. And obviously the White Sox can be in a position, as Zach referred to, sort of play the sort of long game, set up for the playoffs, because they're in. I mean, they were in like in March, it seems. But on the other hand, I don't like, and again, this is something I think Zach alluded to here as well. I don't like the idea of just, it doesn't matter until the playoffs. And of course, the playoffs are what matter, but I would like to be the Rays. Now, granted, probably every year I could say that, but I would rather be a team that's really humming, or the Yankees have obviously certainly pick things up. You don't want to burn out. You don't want to get all your makes out in the regular season, of course, then get swept in a first round. However, I also don't want to necessarily shuffle into the playoffs. Is there a concern? It's easy to say, "Oh, come on, playoffs all that matters." Shut up, Brett. But on the other hand, we also don't want to backpedal into October either.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. I think Stone said it on a broadcast. It was a few weeks ago at least, but talking to those Cleveland teams that, won the division, they did the same thing. And that's why they let Edwin Encarnacion go. That's why they traded Mike Clevenger, why they traded Corey Kluber, because they know they can cut payroll and still cruise the division every year. And I believe what Stone was saying was that talking to those guys, like, it does have an effect when you're not really playing balls to the wall competitive baseball for 2 months. And then suddenly it's hard to flip a switch like that. So my hope is that the race for home field, or at least the 2 seed or the 1 seed, kind of heats up a little bit and becomes a thing. Because I'm completely with you. I don't like the idea of kind of being on cruise control until there's suddenly 40,000 screaming people there. And some of them aren't even your fans. So
it's like, Tony's been there. He's won 86 divisions, man. He knows what he's doing. Okay, I get it. All right, I suppose I'm willing to hand the keys to him, so to speak, to be able to manage this as a very manager. But Darren, Joe, thoughts there? Of course, we want to win every game, but is it important to win a lot of games in September?
Yeah, especially, at a certain point, you're going to want to have Reynaldo Lopez or Mike Wright, or whomever the 2 guys they call up in September to take spot starts, just to keep people fresh off of a 60-game 2020 season. And now we're in the final 2 very important months. You want to keep, the bullets left in their arms. But other than that, they should be going out and throwing everything that they can to get at home field advantage for at least 1 series. I'm not super confident that they'll be the best record in the American League, but second is right there for the taking. And I think that's huge for them, because it was huge last year. We saw that they couldn't really get it done in the final game because Ricky Renteria was, he was fired for that performance, but it was a huge difference going from going to play in Oakland. But you still gotta keep people healthy. Rodon, you don't really want him starting all the time. Cease don't really want him starting all the time, but there's a certain point where you gotta keep beating up on these really bad teams. I think they need to win these next 5 games with the Royals and the Pirates. That'd be awesome. If they could get out of their 7-7 mini slump, or whatever you want to call it, the past couple of weeks, and then kind of ride that out. But I don't think it's a gigantic issue, but again, home field advantage for at least one series is a big thing for me, at least.
Yes, I don't have that much to add to that. I would obviously home field advantage would be very good. The White Sox have played some really good baseball on the south side of Chicago this year, without a question. But if forced to pick between one, a roster at full strength or home field advantage, I would take a roster at full strength.
Reasonably said by Sox math champion Joseph Resis. Let's talk for a second, because this was supposed to be like a crosstown review, and on one hand, who cares? But all right, thoughts on the Cubs series. Took 5 of 6, a ridiculous series where they scored 8,000 runs, only won 2 games. Certainly fun to see them piling runs up. Nice to just see the offense break out, even if it's against a high A team. Thoughts on it, and I guess beyond thoughts on the series, does it already feel like punching down? And as a corollary to that, is it now no longer fair or fun to make fun of the Cubs? I have my own thoughts, but I'm curious to know about your thoughts on the weekend and the larger, more esoteric pictures involving our crosstown rivals.
I will say it's always fun to make fun of the Cubs in any circumstance, even if the Sox are bad and the Cubs are good.
We've been doing it for 4 years.
Like when they won in 2016, well, we won it first. So that is always my backdrop. But again, yeah, like, is it punching down? Sure, but our division's really bad, so it's punching down for a lot of the season.
Every team we look at, they're everywhere. All right, well, there's no wrong answers, guys, but Darren nailed it there. Darren nailed it.
Depends on the sportsmanship of the Cubs fans, in my opinion. It's if you have a bunch of screenshots from 2018 where they're like trashing the rebuilds, I think that during the crosstown series, when the Sox are up 13-1, that's a perfect time to bring those back out, especially if they're not being such good sports about having their team gutted this year, and the Sox having obviously one of their best years in recent memory. If they're respectful, I'm gonna just lay off. I'm just gonna say good game. It just sort of depends.
Okay, Darren was in the gutter. Joe took the professorial route. Zach, split the difference here.
Yeah, I really think it depends on the fan. Like, I know a lot of Cubs fans, who have been around for a long time, and they know how these things go in cycles and how it goes up and down. And they're, for the most part, I've not heard much of a peep from them. They know what it is. I do think though that there is probably a very large segment of their fan base that the Cubs really only picked up around like 2015, 2016, when that run started happening. And these people have not necessarily experienced the Cubs being what they have been for the large majority of their history. So if those folks want to run their, if anyone wants to run their mouths, I'm just going to be sitting here watching the Sox win, being like, haha, it's no skin off my back. But yeah, no, Cubs fans are open season if they're being jerks about it. Otherwise we can have respectful relations. As to the series though, I will say that even when times were lean, the crosstown always had a little bit of extra oomph to it. It was always a little more competitive than your standard, your standard weekend series, I guess. So I'm also not going to ding them as much as we might for the Cubs basically being a minor league team right now, because they were coming to play, they wanted to win. It's never quite a normal series. So I'm always going to take a little extra enjoyment in having it be a beatdown.
Yeah. Well, Zachary, I'm certainly going to ding them for being a minor league team because they voluntarily chose to do this. And we can debate. If this was a Cubs podcast, we debate that, but it's not a Cubs podcast. We're smart fans. We're good people. So we're not talking about the Cubs any more than we have to. So let's drag ourselves out of that. Although the Cubs are going to haunt us in the second half of this podcast. I'll just throw in that, yes, I fall a little bit more in line, I suppose, with Darren's answer. And one thing mentioned on our prior podcast, number 62, and among the far-reaching topics that Billick and I discussed, was the fact that we have a very different scenario in the 2020s ahead for us. We talk about this being in cycles, but it's been a solid 40 years. I believe the anniversary just passed of the Tribune buying the Cubs. It changed the complexion of fandom, obviously complexion of coverage. It molded fans in a way, it put a thumb on a scale in a way that we've never seen before in Chicago. And now that the shackles are off, it's going to be a very interesting decade. And I think fandom is going to take a twist. You've even seen some of the stories now, both the Sun-Times and the former Cubs mouthpiece Tribune, both throwing out things like, can the White Sox take over the city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It speaks to a lot of longtime bias in this city that people, maybe particularly younger fans, may not really be able to grasp, maybe because they don't know any better. Zach referred to fans who've just been around since like the World Series or a division title run for the Cubs. They're in for a rude awakening, and that goes for the longtime fans as well, because you're going to see empty seats. Not going to fan shame, who care, attendance shame, who cares. But you can see empty seats. You can see a lot of things you're not used to seeing with the Cubs. And, as a Sox fan, it's going to be fun to sit back and really enjoy. Let's take a quick break. We're going to talk more White Sox. We're going to talk a little more broad baseball as well in the second half. But we're going to take a break. Be right back with you with Southside Sox Mothership Podcast number 63. I have a delightful trio of guests here with me. You're going to have to rewind to the start of the podcast to get the extended intro. But for now, let's just call them Zach and Joe and Darren. The guy in the other room, I wish he'd turned down a speaker, but whatever. I'm just dealing with reverb. So all my stumbles here, it's Darren's fault. Okay. Darren Black, Miners guy, Miners update. Okay. We are going to talk now about, I want your call for, is it going to be somebody from the pitching staff? Is it going to be a hitter? Who's your Chicago White Sox MVP with a month left in the season? Who's your MVP?
I'm going to say Carlos Rodon, and I feel like Lance Lynn would probably be the popular choice here because he is probably going to finish top 2, top 3 in Cy Young voting. But Los would be right there if it wasn't for being hurt. And the thing for me especially is that Lynn was acquired to be a number 1 or 2 playoff starter. We know what Tim Anderson is going to give us, and we know what we're going to get out of Moncada and Grandal for the most part. Rodon is the one, X factor on this roster who's going to win playoff games for them, who is not supposed to be there. And he's a large part of the reason why he was carrying them to wins when they were throwing out lineups with Billy Hamilton and Brian Goodwin and Danny Mendick and Leury Garcia all within 5 spots of each other. Those are games that, I think we'd be in a much different position in the division, especially with that early season run, if it wasn't for him. Because everyone else all the other pitching staff are doing what they were expected of him. Rodon is everything that he does right now is just icing on the cake, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If we're going to take, if someone X and X didn't get injured, I think it'd be Luis Robert. I think he would be far and away the best player or the most WAR on the team, because I think he's actually like 5th in the lineup in WAR, and he's played 40 games, which is he's just really good. But yeah, Rodon, they've already signed Lance Lynn, so I'm not expecting Rodon to be back. And if this was his last year here and he finally reached his, number 3 pick potential, that'd just be an awesome story for him to go out on. He's been fantastic all year long. Just early on in the season where he was in the 6th, 7th inning, getting to 100 pitches and then still throwing 99, which is something I would not have expected a couple of years ago, 5 surgeries ago, whatever it was for him. And it's just an amazing story that he's been able to have the success he's had. And now he might even start game 1 of the playoffs too. But yeah, I definitely Rodon. If we're statting out for injury, I would say Robert, but we can't do that. So I'll go with Rodon.
Somebody might be able to, because I think if I can remember all the way back, and I'm an old man, so I don't know if I can remember this far back, but I seem to remember that Joe Resis was definitely on the Luis Robert hype train. I'm not sure if he picked him for MVP of the league. I don't know if he just picked him for White Sox MVP. I don't know if I'm just having a brain fart and I don't remember it right correctly at all. So if there's anyone tempted to actually call Luis Robert the team MVP, it might be Joe Resis, but I'll stop talking now and let Joe let us know who his MVP pick is.
You are correct that I picked Luis Robert to be the White Sox MVP this season. Unfortunately, he has been injured too much of this season for me to pick him for this, but he has been absolutely incredible in the time that he has seen the field this year, and I've been very impressed. Carlos Rodon absolutely has the best story out of any White Sox player this year. I would lean toward Lance Lynn, though, for MVP. That trade, 6 years of Dane Dunning for, at the time, 1 year of Lance Lynn before they extended him. That looked a little strange at the time. And I was a little concerned that, okay, if they don't really maximize on this 1 year, then that we might look back on that trade in a couple of years and be like, okay, we, traded 6 years of Dane Dunning for like 1 year of maybe a slightly above average pitcher, but he's been far better than above average. He's been quite a big spark to the team as well. And yeah, he said himself, and many people have agreed in that he fits very well with the, on the South Side. His personality just kind of meshes well with the team. And the results have been there consistently throughout the season, and I would say so far, that trade is working out just about as well as it could have gone.
I'm picking Carlos Rodon, but because I don't want to be boring, I don't want to put anybody to sleep, I'm going to say my MVP for the White Sox is Andrew Vaughn. Now, of course, you're not going to pick a guy who's got a 1.3 WAR or whatever, as your MVP. But the fact that the guy took it all, nothing is thrown. He's played second base, for God's sake. He's not really gone underwater during the season. He's playing, I think, right field some now. He's a good teammate. He's got Tony tried to bury him like in the first series, it seemed like, and he was like, whatever, okay, I'm just here. I'm happy to be here. I'm just going to mash. Seems like he's evened out some of his uneven splits. You guys, you smart guys could tell me, but I know for a while he's definitely struggling a lot against right-handers, and maybe that's evened out a little bit. I don't know. But just to just not be a sheep here, although, Joe, bless you, Lance Lynn instead of Carlos Rodon. I'm saying Andrew Vaughn is my MVP, but there's still a month to go. So who knows? It could be Cesar Hernandez. It could be. Okay, so that's MVPs for the White Sox. We could talk about call-ups, but you know what? Me and Darren, we might just sit down and talk in the other room. We might not do a podcast. We might just chat, and then maybe we'll write a little story up about it. Or we'll just share our notes. We'll scan our notes about it. But if we do have a podcast, we'll probably be talking about that tomorrow. So forget call-ups, whatever. Zach Collins probably has to come back, whatever. But let's talk about a baseball-wide issue, which is at times ridiculous, maybe sort of serious. There's a lot of criticism that can be levied on the organization, not just the players. Over there in Gotham, the New York Mets have a little controversy on their hands because apparently Javier Báez and Francisco Lindor and a few other guys want to do like a thumbs down back to the Boo Birds at Citi Field. It's erupted into controversy. The Mets immediately, like within 5 seconds, seemingly came down hard and said that's not going to be tolerated. And meanwhile, there are probably still various sexual offenders throughout their organization, creating malfeasances at every level of the New York Mets. So a little bit of inconsistency there. Okay. Javier Báez situation, thumbs down or booing, essentially booing back to fans who boo. It's just not going to fly in New York. But what are your thoughts on this controversy?
Oh, for me, it started out as like an embarrassingly funny story. Like the fact that they thought a rallying cry for the team was to thumbs down their fans was just like really funny to me, but in an embarrassing, like a very deeply embarrassing way. And I just thought like, oh, this is silly. And maybe it'll be like a couple games, but I did think it was odd that, the guys that were acquired this year, Lindor and Javier Báez were kind of the leaders of it, which seemed strange. And then the GM got involved and like made it serious, and then it was just like embarrassingly embarrassing, and it was just like, this is not. They finally won a game, and this happened. It was just really, I mean, like I remember I was at the game where Chris Sale cut up the jerseys, and I just remember thinking like that was just so funny. Like I can't believe I was there for that, and then story after story came out, and it was like, wow, this is like one of the more embarrassing things I've ever heard. And then that's kind of the same feelings here for Javi Báez and the New York Amazing Mets.
At a much higher price tag than New York. Yes, funny. Francisco Lindor and Javier Báez are going to change, 60 years of baseball with the New York Mets. Okay, Zach, Joe, what do you think?
Man, yeah. Mets, man. It's the Mets. Embarrassing. Look, it's only embarrassing if you take it that seriously, you know. And on that note, so I've like yeah, everyone looks really dumb here. It's like, okay, I think from an aesthetic perspective, from someone who enjoys watching baseball be played, Javi Báez is one of my favorite players to watch on the planet. That being said, Javi should know full well that, the amount of celebration or jeering you get is commensurate with your performance. If you get, light a pitcher up, you get to celebrate. If you get lit up, you let the pitcher celebrate against you. If you play badly in New York, you are going to get booed. Like, it's that, again. Also, that being said, players motivate themselves in weird ways. If they want to do that fun thumbs down thing, you know what? Who the hell cares? Who cares? And to cap that off, the thing that is really ridiculous about it, and why I can't really reserve too much comment for Javi and Lindor and Pilar and those guys, because their players are weird. They'll do what they need to do to get in the zone. That's always been the case. However, the media members and the Mets management who are taking all of this time and doing all of this yelling and screaming, when none of them could have bothered to point out the fact that Sandy Alderson lied to our face collectively about what the team knew and when they knew it about the nature of Jared Porter and Mickey Callaway. And while the media stayed completely silent about it too and didn't push them on it, I can't take this seriously in the slightest when that reality is still a reality. So it's hard to be mad at the players. It's more, my first instinct there is to be like, just cover the team. Just shut up already. Stop making a big deal out of this stuff.
It's rare and it's delightful when the entire table, the entire conference room of players in this, by players, I mean ownership and media and the actual players, are all collectively showing their asses. They've all dropped trout. Everyone, yes, it is embarrassing. It is hilarious. And then, again, there's sort of a sick and sad side to it that Zach just alluded to. Joe, how you feeling about Javier Báez? Thumbs down, New York Mets.
That was a good point from Zach about how players sometimes they need a ways to get themselves locked in, and that I could buy that as just one of those strange ways that some players decide to do that, and that's totally fine. I've never been a fan of fans booing a particular player. Like, maybe I would have booed Adam LaRoche for the White Sox. That's about it, though. I don't know. I've just not been a fan of that.
So booing your own players, you're not a fan of, not just booing anybody. Okay.
Right. Exactly. I'm always hoping that, for the players who are underperforming for the White Sox, that they'll turn things around. And I imagine it's probably, pretty disheartening when you can't even rely on your own fans to help you out. The road, fans on the road make it hard enough. And so home games should feel like home games. And so that wasn't, I just don't think that's, a good move. Like, while it's true that fans, spent their own money for a ticket. They have the right to do that. Doesn't necessarily mean that they should. As far as calling out the fans, I mean, there were better ways that Báez could have gone about that. It was a little strange. Probably not a great move on his side either to call out the fan base, but it's just kind of a messy situation all around. But yeah, I think there's just a kind of a strange culture as far as the fans in New York being so quick to boo their own players.
An interesting subtext to this as well has been some Cubs fans, or maybe media, but I think Cubs fans sort of coming out and, I don't know, castigating New York fans. Like, you don't appreciate them. You don't know how to prize these players. It's like, holy cow, Chicago Cubs fans trying to present themselves as the pinnacle of decorum as baseball fans is very, I have to say, very rich. That's been an interesting subtext to follow along with as if somehow like they do I think we can agree that New York is, an entirely different, aside from maybe Philadelphia, an incredibly different animal than maybe anywhere else on the planet. But the idea that somehow Cubs fans have got it figured out and they know when to golf clap, they know when to lightly boo, they know when to cheer loudly, they know when to throw trash on the field, they know when to actually enter the field and visit the pitcher's mound and tackle a pitcher, it's interesting. I like that double standard. They need Javier back, and Zach wants him back. They need Javier back. The Cubs sign those 250Ks back, man. Give them 250 million. Thoughts on Cubs fans dropping their monocle over how Javier Báez is being treated after 2 weeks in New York?
They're all screaming around like chickens with their heads cut off. It's like they don't know where to turn their focus and attention at this point, because it sure ain't the team right now.
That is true. Is this going to be I don't want to talk about the Cubs. I just brought the Cubs back up, and I'm not going to ask more questions about the Cubs. Báez, MVPs, state of the White Sox. We have, as Darren pointed out, we have a very winnable 5-0. Might be asking a lot. I don't know. But we have a very winnable stretch here. This is the point where I think even back approaching the All-Star break, we looked and said, okay, things change a little bit. September is going to be a little bit more of a breather. There's still some tough series in there, but it's different than what July was, even though July found those teams reducing their strength. Cleveland, Cubs, a lot of teams bailing, even the Twins to some degree, bailing on the season more than they already had. Do we need to see 5-0? What is this next very winnable stretch of 5 games? Do they need to run the table 5-0? Does it need to be 4-1? If they go 2-3, are you going to be concerned?
Well, at this point, the only thing that would concern me is an injury, to be honest. I don't, even if they go 2-3, 1-4, 0-5, unless Cleveland also wins 5 or 6 straight, then I would be concerned. But that seems like a tall task for them to win that many games in a row. But yeah, I want to see them go 5-0, 4-1, because I want to push Houston for that second home field advantage. September is when they call up 2 people. I'm not sure if they're gonna, maybe call up Jimmy Lambert and give him a spot start or something. I don't know how they're gonna play it this weekend. But even if they do call up a AAA guy to start, it's the Royals and the Pirates. They should still be beating them anyway, because they're just better in general. But not too concerned. But 4-1, 5-1, or 5-0 would be obviously fantastic.
Yeah, I don't like, in a vacuum at this point, the actual number of wins and losses doesn't really matter all that much. But like if they go 1-4 or 2-3, it probably means that pitchers like Giolito or Cease or Lynn were getting beat up a little bit, or even on the back end of the bullpen, it means someone like Kimbrel or Kopech or Crochet or Hendricks are giving up fair numbers of runs to teams that they shouldn't be. So that is going to be concerning. So I think the actual like win-loss means a little bit less than just watching how they play, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and you brought out in your write-up, Zach, in the loss. Sorry, apologies, but thanks for falling on the sword there. Lynn obviously had terrible outing, but even it wasn't necessarily just bad luck. It was that a really key pitch from the cutter wasn't performing the way it should. And perhaps if another loss is around the corner, then perhaps that will be factor again. And now we start to there is maybe some concern building, because we don't want the guy to be batting practice in the playoffs. So yeah, even if it's a close loss, but the cutter's performing the way it should, okay, maybe you're okay with that versus just maybe what we saw against the Cubs for 2 or 3 more starts. Joe, I remember around All-Star break, you're like, yeah, whatever. They go 500. I'm okay with it. I'm not going to, you weren't getting too excited. I was jumping out of my seat and falling down and turning red. And it turns out that your long play, was the smarter one because they had the division in the bag, all this time. So are you going to get uptight if they only win, say, a couple of these next 5?
If they go 2-3 or worse, it would be a disappointing stretch of games for them. These are games that on paper they should win, but even with some backups, getting some starts. But I wouldn't be concerned really unless there is a significant injury that would cut into October.
All right. This has been, of course, a riveting, exciting, you love it. You are getting your money's worth every time out with the Southside Sox podcast. You don't even don't leave a comment. I don't want to see a comment about that. I already know that's what you feel in your heart. We're winding this one down. We'll have another one like, I don't know, tomorrow or something. They never stop. It's relentless. Even when you don't want them, you get one. But on behalf of Zach Hayes, the guy who took the loss just because he's like, man, I got a 7-game pad. I'm going to lose a game. Darren Black, who I think I'll talk to tomorrow, or we'll just have lunch and we'll share our notes. Super Joseph Resis, if he's not winning Sox math, just walking down the street, window shopping. He's on a podcast with me as well, straight out of the field office in Indianapolis. This is a one-time, guys. You can all talk at once. Thank you very much for joining me on podcast number 63.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you.
All right. You almost did it. Next time I want it in unison. Okay. Thanks everybody, as always, for reading, for sometimes listening, for always watching, some combination of those things, but appreciate your readership. We're not here without you. We'll be back with more podcasts. I don't know, Darren, we're just going to have a slumber party night. So we'll see you tomorrow night.